In the church of my childhood, I learned a catchy little song that declared, "I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart." Anybody else? Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart to stay. It's a song that I've not sung in a very long time. I grew up and I left the theology that plays out through the rest of the song behind. But like a persistent earworm, this tune has been very much on my mind in recent weeks as we've prepared for this upcoming series around the question, got joy? I've wondered whether it's a song we could ever sing here. Could we actually claim that we've got joy deep in our hearts to stay? I mean, we Unitarians are a pretty serious bunch. We are, after all, the inheritors of a tradition tracing back to the Puritans, people who aren't exactly remembered today for their unbridled joie de vivre and fun-loving ways. But we may not be as different from them as we may like to think. As a people who strive in our own time to be awake to the world, we are often weighed down by the troubles that span our globe. And we often feel an outsized burden to repair the world, to fight injustice, to dismantle oppression, to work for peace and secure the future of life on this planet. All of which is right and good and an important part of the high calling of our tradition. And yet it is not and cannot be the only part. For when our hearts are so busy and so full trying to hold a world of hurt, our capacity for joy can be crowded out. The spark of our life diminished, the light within us dimmed, and the taproot that sustains us withered and unable to serve life. To be sure, there are times when we suffer such personal heartache that even the thought of joy is impossible to conjure. In deepest sorrow, joy can simply feel too much to bear, at least for a time. That is a normal, natural part of being human. As the band REM rightly reminded us in the 90s, everybody hurts sometime, and so we do. To be alive means enduring periods when our hearts are ripped right open by hurts and losses, by betrayals and bad luck, by reversals of fortune, and by setbacks that sting for years. Joy may be very hard to find at such times. Over the next few weeks, Lynn and I will be exploring with you what it means to seek the joy that sustains us, come what may. Joy that carries us through life's troubles. The joy that we can have down in our hearts to stay. This morning, I want to speak to what might be called our resistance to joy. Off the top, I want to make clear that I'm not talking about people living with the black dog of depression. As so many who have dealt with depression know, it can be an exhausting ordeal to find even the simplest of joys. Sometimes one can only press on to get through to the other side of the struggle. But instead, today, I'm speaking to that resistance that comes from the feeling that joy is frivolous or foolish, that it is unwarranted in a world so shot through with suffering, or that we ourselves are somehow not deserving of joy. There are, as it turns out, many ways to resist joy. One is the reverse of that great German word, Schadenfreude, where Schadenfreude is taking pleasure in the suffering of others. Its reverse, it seems to me, is feeling guilty in our own moments of genuine joy or denying them altogether. It's resisting joy because we feel for some reason that joy is misguided or indulgent or mistimed. Now, of course, it is rude to gloat about your team's or your party's victory when your friend or neighbor is suffering a biting loss. And it is an affront to etiquette to celebrate with abandon if those around you are mourning and in serious grief. but there is an insidious form of resistance in the day-to-day that I overhear in conversations around here and that I recognize sometimes in myself, that is about putting off joy because of the suffering we see all around. A couple of weeks ago, the staff revisited our plans for this worship series, which were originally set in the spring. We wondered, given the events of this summer in our city and the wider world, is it misplaced to offer a series on joy? For a moment there, we were wrestling with whether or not to resist joy. But we decided such a series is exactly what we need in this moment. For in the face of the world's suffering, joy itself can be a form of resistance. I was reminded of this summer in Mexico, where I spent most of the summer. There, as in much of the Spanish-speaking world, it's polite when breaking bread to say provecho to one's dining companions. It's akin on one level to saying bon appetit, but it also carries a deeper meaning that I find very powerful. Provecho means enjoy your meal, make the most of it, in case you might not have the resources for another meal, or you might not live long enough to enjoy it. One of my closest friends has long had a habit of eating dessert first. We'll sit down in a restaurant, the waiter will arrive to take our drink order, only to discover that my friend is ready to order a slice of cheesecake or carrot cake or both as an appetizer. What the waiters never know is that my friend has lived with HIV for almost 3 decades and had many terrifying scrapes with death back before the drug cocktail changed everything in 1996. I've lived through those worrying times with him, and so his fixation with eating dessert first has become an important and ongoing life lesson for me. Provecho, make the most of this meal. Provecho, make the most of this moment. This is far more than a thoughtless, hedonistic attitude of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. It is a call to savor life's gifts amid the suffering and uncertainty that so define our existence. It is a call to honor with gratitude the blessings that come our way, knowing that things might be and eventually will be otherwise. It is a call to recognize that this life is at best bittersweet, and that, as the poet William Blake put it, joy and sorrow are woven fine. That line of splendid verse is never far from my thoughts as one of your ministers. It is a reality we uphold each week in our service as we lift up the joys and sorrows of our lives, and as we light candles in celebration and despair, in gratitude and grief. Through the course of the service, usually through the course of the sermon, as the wax of our many candles melt and meld into one another, I always feel it's a fitting way to symbolize how joy and sorrow are so inextricably tied together. And so, too, with the gathering of the waters ritual that we'll participate in later in this service. Into this common bowl, we will pour water that celebrates wonderful and joyous milestones from this summer, along with water that holds painful memories and feelings of deep sorrow. This water, drawn from the far-flung corners of this good green earth, when swirled together, becomes a similar symbol of joy and sorrow woven fine. And so it is fitting that we take a small portion of this water each year and, after boiling it, use it for the baby dedication ceremonies we hold throughout the rest of the year. It is fitting that as we bless these children with our promises and best wishes, we also formally induct them into the human experience that will surely bring to each of their lives the bittersweet blend of joy and sorrow common to us all. And so it is fitting in this place where we help to give shape to their lives that we are intentional in teaching them everything we know of what it means to live a life of joy. For such a life is one rooted in wonder and gratitude, in reverence and awe. Joy is connection to life itself, and it is connection to others. It is one of the most intense ways for us to know that we are alive. But joy can also be fleeting, especially if the bliss we may sometimes feel is our only measure. Joy, though, when more deeply known, is something that can abide with us, something that can sustain us through life's struggles, something that we can have deep in our hearts to stay. May it be so for our children. May it be so for each of us. May we allow joy, the sheer pleasure of being alive, to break through in moments great and small, at times planned for and at others unexpected. May we overcome our resistance to joy, knowing that it can, when we despair for the world and our place in it, be a form of resistance itself. As Jack Gilbert so powerfully put it, we must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention, he says, is to praise the devil. Let us then not postpone joy. Let us embrace it for the gift it is, weaving it fine whenever it comes into whatever else life gives to us. For then we praise the gift of being, for then we praise the wonder of life. Provecho, dear ones, provecho.